Hi, I'm Cheri Carlson from Artbeads.com, and today I'm going to show you how to do the 2-drop peyote stitch. So the 2-drop peyote is identical to the 1-drop peyote stitch, if you're familiar with that, with one exception. You're doing 2 beads at a time. The fun thing about that is it goes a lot quicker. Because you're picking 2 beads at a time, the stitch just moves faster. So if you're doing really tiny beads or wide pieces, the piece will build faster. This piece is the 2-drop peyote, and this looks very organic and wavy, and you don't necessarily see the drop of beads in this piece, but this is to show you that you can do any kind of pattern with the 2-drop as well. This is an even count. This is also the 2-count peyote and even count. So there's an even number of rows of beads, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So there is not a center row in the even count. And then this is the odd count peyote, and there is a center pattern, but this is where there is a little bit of a difference in the even count and odd count from the original, just the single bead peyote stitch, and I'll kind of explain that as we go a little further as well. So this is a little swatch that I did of the 2-count peyote, and I did this so that each pair, as you're picking them up, would be one color, so you can distinguish between the stitches or pairs of beads as you stitch. So it's very visible and easier to see when you're just beginning. So I'm going to show you how to go about setting that up. So I have my thread, I've got a stopper bead on here, and I have 12 beads in pairs. So you can see I have 6 in groups of 2s. The thing I want to point out is there are 12 beads. That's an even count, or would be considered an even count in regular peyote stitch. But it's the total number of pairs that counts and determines whether you're going to do it in odd stitch or odd count or even count. This is 12 beads and 6 pairs. So 6 pairs is an even count, and so you're going to stitch this as an even count. So I have my beads on my thread, and I'm going to match up my colors just to make it easy. So I have 2 black beads. I'm going to pick up 2 black beads, and I want to stack these 2 black beads on top of the 2 that I have here. So in order to do that, I'm going to skip those 2, and I'm going to stitch through the next pair of beads. Happens to be my green, like that. And then I'm going to pull that down and snug that up. There we go. So you can see that the 2 new beads are stacked on top of the original 2 black beads. Now I'm going to, what I want to do is put 2 mustard colored beads on top of the existing mustard color beads. So I'm going to pick up 2. I'm going to skip over those 2. And I'm going to thread my needle through the next pair of beads, which happens to be this bronzy copper, like that. And then I'm going to pull that down. So you can see now I have 2, and then the next group doesn't have a pair on top. Then I have the mustard that has been paired up, and then this group has been skipped, and now I want to put 2 black beads on top of these 2. So I'm going to pick up 2 more black beads. I'm going to skip them, and I'm going to thread my needle through the next pair, or last pair in this case. There we go. So we have, you can see every other group is now 4 beads, and then the other groups are just 2. And this is where I like to then snug up my stopper bead. I've worked away from it just to give myself a little elbow room, but now I want it nice and tight. So I'm going to slide those down, and it's up against my stopper bead. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come back this way with our thread, and we're going to add 2 green beads. We're going to skip through the black, add 2, skip through, add 2, and skip through. I'm going to flip this in my hand. Since I'm right-handed, I'm working from my right to my left. So now it looks like this. And know that the tail, or the end that your stopper bead is on, is, in my case, it's my left hand. So that will always be the case for reference. So I'm picking up 2 little green beads. I want them to stack here. So I'm just going to stitch through the 2 black beads. Like so. Now I want 2 of the little brass copper stacked, so I'm going to stitch through the up beads. And then I want 2 green again. So I'm stitching through the last pair. There, so you can see how easy that is, and it will go pretty fast once you get rolling, but you can see the pairs. These are now the up beads, the down beads, the up beads, down, and so on. And then to continue, I'm just going to flip that in my hand again. I know that my tail and my stopper is to my left at the bottom, and then I'm just going to continue, and I'm going to add 2 with the black here, skip through, add 2, and so on. So that's really all there is to the even count peyote stitch. Okay, so for odd count, I have the white and silver that I did for the little companion bracelet, and this is where the 2-drop peyote differs from the single drop. I have 6 beads on the thread, and that's an even number. So you might think that you're going to do even peyote, but 6 beads makes 3 pair, and that's an odd number, and that's the number that counts. And so this is odd count peyote. So my first 2 beads are this kind of opaly white. I'm going to pick up 2, and I want them to stack on those 2. So I'm going to skip them and stitch through the 2 center silver beads, and then pull that down. And you can see now that when I pulled it tight, these beads are stacking on top of the first 2. Now this is where odd count is a little different from even. I'm going to snug these up a little bit. I'm going to pick up my 2 white beads. I want them to stack on top of the 2 white beads here, but there's nothing to stitch through. There aren't 2 beads beyond that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in backwards, and I'm going to stitch through, whoops, the 2 that are going to be below it, and then pull my beads tight. So you can see these are the 2 that were added, and then I brought my needle down through these beads, and that connects those 2 rows together. I'm going to bring that thread, oops, I'm going to bring that thread up here, and I'm going to put my needle through that bead. So we came out of this bead, we went through this bead, and now I want my thread to come down to go through this bead. So now my thread is coming out of this bead on the outside edge. I want it to go through this bead. I'm going to go ahead and flip it in my hand at this point. So now I'm working from right to left again. And I'm just going to stitch through those first 2, whoops, stitch through the first 2 beads like that. There. So now I'm ready to add my 2 center beads. I'm going to stitch through the other two. So now I have the 3 groups of 4 beads, and I'm going to continue. I'm going to turn that in my hand again. Now this is the even side, or the side that my tail is not on. So I don't have to do anything tricky or fancy to add the next 2 beads. I'm just going to add them like you do for even count. I'm just going to put my 2 beads on, stitch through this adjacent 2. And here we are at that odd side again. So I'm going to pick up 2 white beads. I want them to stack there, but there's nothing to stitch them to. So this is when I'm going to go backwards through the row that's below it. There, and there you can see the beads. And now I need to get that thread back out to the outside edge and going in the right direction again. So again, I'm bringing this thread up and through just the 1 bead. And then I want the thread to come down so I can get it to the outside. And as you get going, you'll be able to make that maneuver in one. You'll just kind of come in, you can come in through this upper bead and then angle it right down through that outside bead to get it to that outside edge. And now I'm ready to flip it and go ahead and go through my 2 beads, and now I'm ready to add that next row. To the center. And so that's it for the odd count 2-drop peyote. You'll just continue. You will always do that loop around on the tail side that you started, and then even on the other side. And what's fun about the odd count is that it allows you to have a center in your design. If you're seeing this for the first time and you've not done regular peyote stitch, it's the same thing. With even count peyote, it's the same, and then odd count, you just do that little workaround to get to the outside edge. So if this is your start, then know that you'll be able to do that as well. I hope this was helpful, and enjoy doing the odd and even count 2-drop peyote.